یہاں حسین کا سجدہ، ماں کی دعا ہے غازی، میری دعا سکینہ، ماں کی دعا ہے غازی، میری دعا سکینہ، تو عالیہ علی کی میری عالیہ سکینہ، تو عالیہ علی کی میری عالیہ سکینہ، یہ رات آخری ہے حاضر ہے میرا سینہ، حاضر ہے میرا سینہ، قسمت میں ہو نہ ہو پھر سو جا ذرا سکینہ، قسمت میں ہو نہ ہو پھر سو جا ذرا سکینہ، پہلی ضرب چلی تو شبیر نے پکارا، شبیر نے پکارا، قاتل نہ تجھے کمارے خیمے میں جا سکینہ، در کون لے گیا ہے سر کیوں پتا ہوا ہے، سر کیوں پتا ہوا ہے، بابا ملے گا تم کو پتر ہتا سکینہ، دور کیچ کر اتارے سر پر ہے نیز مارے، سر پر ہے نیز مارے، پردیس میں بابا بے آسرا سکینہ، پردیس میں ہے بابا بے آسرا سکینہ، صلوات who Hadi Raza to the member for recitation with a loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
نعرہ تکبیر،
Allahu Akbar.
نعرہ رسالت،
Ya Rasulullah.
نعرہ حیدری،
Ya Ali.
حیدری،
Ya Ali.
صلوات.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
میں خوش نصیب ہوں مجھے پہ کرم حسین کا ہے، میں خوش نصیب ہوں مجھے پہ کرم حسین کا ہے، ارے عطا کیا ہوا سارا بھرم حسین کا ہے، میں خوش نصیب ہوں مجھے پہ کرم حسین کا ہے، میں موت میں ہوں جہاں میں حسین کے صدقے، میں موت میں ہوں جہاں میں حسین کے صدقے، قسم خدا کی میرے دم میں دم حسین کا ہے، تو دنیا میں بہت لوگ باصول بنے، بتاؤ ایسا کوئی بطول بنے حسین تیرے مدار کی حد نہیں ملتی کہ تو سواری تیری رسول بنے یزیدیت کو ہوئے سے نگو زمانہ ہوا یزیدیت کو ہوئے سے نگو زمانہ ہوا ارے بلند آج بھی لے کے علم حسین کا ہے میں خوش نصیب ہوں مجھے پہ کرم حسین کا ہے جہاں میں آتے ہی فطر سے کو بالوں پر ہے دیے جہاں میں آتے ہی فطر سے کو بالوں پر ہے دیے ابھی زمین پہ پہلا قدم حسین کا ہے میں خوش نصیب ہوں مجھے پہ کرم حسین کا ہے سلام
اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد
کہے کہ یہ رک گئے سجاد بتایا نہ گیا ارے کون سا ظلم ہے کون سا ظلم ہے جو شام میں ڈھایا نہ گیا کہے کہ یہ رک گئے اور تو کو زنجیر میں جکڑے ہوئے قیدی کے سوا تو کو زنجیر میں جکڑے ہوئے قیدی کے سوا کسی بیمار کو کانٹوں پہ چلایا نہ گیا اور بھیڑ سے در جاتی ہنستے ہوئے لوگوں کی وہاں بھیڑ سے در جاتی ہنستے ہوئے لوگوں کی وہاں سر بھی بازار دیکھا سیراب ذبیحے کو تو بولے سجاد، دیکھا سیراب ذبیحے کو تو بولے سجاد، میرے بابا کو تو پانی بھی پلایا نہ گیا، اور جب تلک نہ گئے سارے شرابی تب تک جب تلک نہ گئے سارے شرابی تب تک ثانی زہرا کو دربار میں لایا نہ گیا، کہے کہ یہ رک گئے۔ صلوات۔
صلوات بر محمد و آل محمد۔
وہ کیا فاطمی ہے، وہ کیا ماتمی ہے، جو مولا علی کی ولا چھوڑتا ہے۔ وہ کیا فاطمی ہے، وہ کیا ماتمی ہے، جو مولا علی کی ولا چھوڑتا ہے۔
نعرہ تکبیر،
اللہ اکبر،
نعرہ رسالت،
یا رسول اللہ،
نعرہ حیدری،
یا علی،
نعرہ حیدری،
یا علی،
اور محمد و آل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم۔
اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد۔
ایک محمد سجاد اسلام کی شان میں۔ افسوس افسوس نبی زادیوں کا شام میں جانا، سجاد سے پوچھو سرننگے وہ ماں بہنوں کا بازار میں جانا، سجاد سے پوچھو، ارے چھپتی تھی نبی زادی کے پیچھے، ارے کس شرم و حیا سے، اور شرم کو ان بیویوں کے نام بتانا، अरे बैठे हुए दरबार में सब छोटे बड़े थे, अरे सादात खड़े थे, अरे सरताश्त में रखा हुआ ज़ैनब को दिखाना, सज्जाद से पूछो सरनंगे वो माँ बहनों का बाजार में जाना, सज्जाद से पूछो पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين أسد الله الغالب غالب على كل غالب مظهر العجائب يعصوب الدين نبه العظيم أول المسلمين ثاني أهل الكساء كسيم النار والجنة زوج البتول نفس الرسول قاتل المشركين صراط المستقيم أبو الحسنين علي بن أبي طالب.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Inshallah, in tonight's speech, I would like to address a question that we get a lot as the Shias of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And that question is, did Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam give bay'ah to Muawiyah alayhi la'na? You see, it's a tricky one because there was an agreement that was signed between these two individuals. Then at the same time, there is also a criticism that comes towards the Holy Imam by saying that Abu Abdullah alayhi salam fought, stood up against a tyrant of his time, did a revolution, did jihad fi sabilillah. But why is it that Imam al-Hassan didn't do jihad? Why is it that Imam al-Hassan didn't fight? And unfortunately, there are certain people that attack Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam on this, and they say that maybe he was not as brave as Abu Abdullah, maybe he was not willing to sacrifice as Abu Abdullah. So that's number one. Number two, what was the agreement that was signed? Did the Imam give bay'ah or not? We will address that as well. One of the major problems that we have is that there are traditions within our books, such as Al-Kafi, one of the Kutub al-Arba, where Shaykh Kulaini narrates that Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussain alayhimus salam went to Sham, sat with Muawiyah, conversed with Muawiyah, and then the hadith says Imam al-Hassan got up and gave bay'ah to Muawiyah. Then he ordered Imam al-Hussain to also do the same. And when someone asked Imam Hussain, why have you done this? He says, because my Imam has commanded me to do so. So how do we reply back to this hadith? How do we refute this hadith? By analyzing the text and the chain of narrators, etc. But also I would like to point out that Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, firstly, nobody can doubt his bravery. Why? The Battle of Jamal was won because of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. You see, when Aisha came to wage a war against the commander of the faithful alayhi salam, she was on a camel, which is why it's called the Battle of Jamal, the Battle of the Camel. And while she was on that camel, her followers were fighting. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says to his son Al-Hassan, "Oh Hassan, in order for us to end this battle, you need to drop the camel down. And you need to drop the rider that is also on the camel down. For when she falls, the war will be over." Because she was the leader of that army. When the leader falls in an army, what happens? Army disintegrates. So the narrations mention that it was Imam al-Hassan on the front lines of the Battle of Jamal, that he came forward and fought with such bravery and ferocity that he was able to take down the camel and drop Aisha down, which is why the battle was won by Amir al-Mu'mineen, but through Al-Hassan alayhi salam. If you go to the Battle of Siffin, the Muawiyah wages a war against the commander of the faithful again. We see that it was Imam al-Hassan who was at the front lines of that battle. You go to the Battle of Nahrawan, it shows us against the Khawarij. It was about Abdullah and Imam al-Hasan and Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas that were standing at the front. But even Abbas and Hussain, alayhimussalam, would stand behind Imam al-Hasan. Why? Because he is the commander of the army of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So nobody can doubt the bravery, the honor, the courage, the combat skills, the valor of Aba Muhammad al-Hasan alayhi salam at all. But why did he not fight? Why did he not raise the sword? Well, let's have a look at this historically and see what happened. When Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was struck on the eve of the 19th of the month of Ramadan, and he was nearing his death, he gave a will to his children and made them all give the bay'ah to Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam and said, he is the Imam after me, and after him it is my son al-Hussain. And narrations mention that Imam Sajjad was 4 to 5 years old. He was also present. And Imam Ali alayhi salam then said to all of those there, after Al-Hussain, this Ali is the next Imam, and then he will have a son whose name will be Muhammad al-Baqir. He is the next Imam after him. It shows us what Amir al-Mu'mineen had designated the Imams, gave the names of the Imams. These people that come forward, Zaydis who believe in 4 Imams, Ismailis that believe in 6 Imams, Waqifis that believe in 7 Imams. Where are you coming from? Where are you getting your information from? When the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi dictated a will to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, and in that will he named all 12 Imams. Amir al-Mu'mineen named the 11 Imams after him. Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam did the same. So when Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam assumed to become an Imam, the narrations mention he was 37 to 38 years old. When Imam al-Hasan became the Imam and the Khalifa of the Muslims, it wasn't just the Shias that gave him bay'ah, no. The narrations mention, Tarikh Tabari for example, it mentions that 40,000 people came to Imam al-Hasan in Masjid al-Kufa and gave the bay'ah on his hand. So Sunnis and Shias are unanimous over the fact that after Ali ibn Abi Talib, the 5th Khalifa of Islam for them is none other than Hassan ibn Ali alayhi salam. Even before Muawiyah, they say Imam al-Hasan is the rightly guided Khalif. So what happened? As soon as Imam al-Hasan assumed leadership, one of the first khutbahs that Imam al-Hasan gave in the Masjid al-Kufa was, "O Muslims, get ready." For what? For jihad. Let's go to war. Against who? He said against Muawiyah. See, when Amir al-Mu'mineen was near the last couple of days before he was struck, he was also instructing the companions, get ready, we're going to wage a war against Muawiyah. We're going to finish him once and for all. So even Imam Ali alayhi salam in his final moments was talking about going against a tyrant like Muawiyah. So as soon as Imam al-Hasan assumed the position of a Khalifa and Imam, and he was given the bay'ah, he said, let's rise and let's fight. A few people came and objected. The first group was who? They were the Shias of Imam al-Hasan, but they said, look, we're very tired of war. Right? Your father, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he ruled for 4 years. In those 4 years, we had 3 civil wars. Jamal, Safin, Nahrawan. We're tired. Tanga. Then you know that there's a thing called PTSD. That when you go to a war and you survive a war, it has psychological effect on you. The last thing you want to do is go back into another war. PTSD is very serious. A lot of people that have survived war will tell you it's not easy. So one group came forward and said, oh Hassan, we are tired of warfare. Jamal, Safin, Nahrawan, and now you want to go to war again? We've lost our family members, we've lost our income, our source of rations, etc. because of these wars and battles. Stop, we don't want any more. That was his first objection. Even then Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam said, I am the Imam of the time and I am commanding you that jihad is wajib upon you. When a ma'soom Imam gives you the fatwa or the hukum of jihad, and I am giving the hukum that we are going to go and we are going to fight Muawiyah. Another group that came forward were only there because they hated Muawiyah. They did not believe in Imam al-Hasan, they didn't believe he was the rightful leader or anything like that. But the only reason they were there was because they hated Muawiyah. So if somebody's rising up against your enemy, what do? You go and join. Why? Because the friend is of yours, of who? When you two share the same enemy. So this was another group. But despite all this, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam gave another khutbah a few days later, got his army ready and marched them towards an area known as Nuqayla. The army of Imam al-Hasan arrived. A lot of people don't know. Imam al-Hasan attempted to fight Muawiyah. He waged a war against Muawiyah. But look what happened, and then you'll understand the situation. The night before Imam al-Hasan arrives, he sends his army there. Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam has a cousin by the name of Ubaydullah ibn Abbas. You see, Abbas was the uncle of the Prophet. He had a son, Ibn Abbas, who is the narrator of Tafsir ibn Abbas. Ubaydullah ibn Abbas was his brother. Ubaydullah ibn Abbas was also the father of Lubaba, who was the wife of Abul Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. So Ubaydullah ibn Abbas is what? The father-in-law of Abul Fadl al-Abbas. Ubaydullah had 8,000 soldiers under his command. He was the cousin of Imam al-Hassan. So Imam Hassan said, oh my cousin, go to Nuqayla tonight. Set a camp there. Wait there. And I will meet you in the morning and we will go towards jihad. The narrations, even within Tariq al-Tabari, will tell you that when Muawiyah found out that the army of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam has arrived at Nuqayla on the outskirts of the borders of Asham, but Imam Hassan himself isn't there, Muawiyah played tactics. See, Muawiyah was very smart. Even though he was an enemy of Ahlul Bayt, sometimes if they have I wouldn't call it a merit, but if they have a quality, then we mentioned that quality. He was very smart, conniving. His advisors, Amr ibn al-As, for example, also a very smart, conniving, tactical individual. He was the one in the Battle of Siffin that when Muawiyah was about to lose, he said, raise the Quran on spears and watch, Ali can't do anything. He has to sign an arbitration because you're asking him to stop in the name of the Quran. Amir al-Mu'mineen is not going to go against the Quran. So Muawiyah was very conniving. So what did he do? He sent a few people towards the army that same night, before Imam al-Hassan gets there in the morning. What did he do? The first group, he said, listen, how much? How much money will it take for you to leave al-Hassan? Unfortunately, there were people within the army that were very materialistic. They could easily be bought. So what did they do? As they say, sold their soul to the devil. He said, give us this much and we'll leave al-Hassan. He says, there you go. Another group said, give us this much, we'll leave him. He says, there you go. Those that couldn't be bribed, Muawiyah's soldiers threatened them. If you do not leave al-Hassan, we will kill you here right now. He's not here to protect you. We are majority right now. Leave him. Out of fear, some of these people left the army of Imam al-Hassan. Some had to practice taqiyya because their life was in danger. And in Islam, when your life is in danger, it's permissible for you to do taqiyya, which is dissimulation from the truth in order to protect your lives. So another group has gone. 12,000 people were in Nuqayla the night before Imam al-Hassan gets there. The last tactic of Muawiyah was what? Governmental positions. You want to be a governor? You want to be an MP? You want to be a leader? You want to run a city? You want to be in charge of the treasury? Leave al-Hassan, I'll give you the position. I'll make you the governor of this area. I'll make you the governor of that area. Those that wanted political power sold themselves and left Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. And the final group, do you want to get married? Pick any girl within Sham, I'll give it to you. Bani Umayyah, selling women in order for the people to leave the Imam. You want slaves? We have the most beautiful girls in Sham. Give me a price, take her. In fact, I'll give it to you for free, just leave al-Hassan. So what happened? His army broke. But those, remember, 8,000 soldiers were with Ubaydullah ibn Abbas, correct? Ubaydullah ibn Abbas sold himself to Muawiyah. Because when the soldiers came to him and said, how much? Tariq Tabari mentions an amount that I would say, just so that we can understand, maybe £1 million in today's currency, but back then. That's the amount that Ubaydullah said, give me this much. Not only will I leave al-Hassan, I will take my 8,000 troops and come and join the army of Muawiyah. Muawiyah said, I agree to the amount, give it to him. He gave Ubaydullah ibn Abbas the amount, he leaves the army of Imam al-Hassan, 8,000 soldiers leave with him. 4,000 left. Out of those 4,000, 3,500 probably left through bribes, threats, marriage, or political power. Narrations mentioned that when Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam arrived at Nuqayla the next day, there was only a handful of people standing there. Abandoned by his people. Yesterday I was telling you, why is it that Imam Sajjad alayhi salam didn't fight out? And we discussed, did Imam Sajjad alayhi salam avenge Karbala? And yesterday I proved he did. Not through the sword, but through other measures of intellect and his merits and his akhlaq and his behavior. However, even right now, Imam al-Hassan only having a few soldiers, he still said, let's go to war. So you can't doubt the courageousness of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. He said, even right now, with a handful of that I have, let's go. If you're scared, stand behind me, I'll protect you. Raise the sword, let's go and fight the enemy of Allah. Even then, the people said no. It's not enough of us now. There's only a few left. Majority have left. Your cousins left you. The people have left you. Let's just leave it here. Here now Muawiyah saw an opportunity. What was it? He sent two people to Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. But before these two people got there, Imam Hassan said, okay, if you're not going to fight and you're not going to support me, then I only have one more option. And that is to go into a peace agreement with Muawiyah. That's all I can do. We can either fight or we can have peace. So now that you are not supporting me and you're not going to fight with me, okay, I'm going to have peace. You know that group of individuals that came and joined the army of Imam al-Hasan only because they hated Muawiyah? They were still there. So when they found out that Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam is thinking about having peace with Muawiyah, that same night, they came into the tent of Imam al-Hasan and stabbed him in his thigh. When they had stabbed him, the people that were remaining with Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, they came, protected the Imam, took those individuals out, arrested them, put them to the side, and said to the Imam, what do we do now? The Imam said, if my own people are stabbing me in the back, I have an enemy as powerful as Muawiyah, who was running Sham. Sham at that time was not just Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Syria. It was all under Balad al-Sham. It was all under the reign of Muawiyah and his leadership. The Imam says, look, he's a powerful enemy, he has many soldiers, my soldiers have abandoned me, and now the worst thing is, they've attacked me. They've stabbed me in the middle of the night. Why? Because I thought about making peace with Muawiyah. But even then Imam al-Hasan said, that's fine. If you still want to go to war, we can go to war. What does it show us? That Imam Hassan alayhi salam tried his utmost to wage a war against Muawiyah. He didn't back away, he didn't cower away. Even on his own, he says, if you guys are scared, stay back, I'll go on my own. I will fight. So when Muawiyah found out that Imam al-Hasan's own people have stabbed him, this is where he sent two individuals to Imam al-Hasan with a blank piece of paper. He entered the tent of Imam al-Hasan and said, this letter is from Muawiyah. Muawiyah is saying, since your own people are stabbing you in the back and you've got no army and you clearly can't fight a war with me right now, how about we enter into a peace agreement? And Muawiyah, what did he do? He didn't even stipulate any conditions. Muawiyah just said, here's a piece of paper, here's my seal on the bottom. I agree to whatever you want to add. So he had already signed the agreement before he even arrived towards Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. Whatever stipulations or Hassan you want to put in that contract, here's my seal of approval for you. So what does the Imam do now? Imam alayhi salam has no choice but to sign the peace treaty. And those people that come forward and attack Imam al-Hasan and say he's weak because he signed a peace treaty with the enemy, then I implore you to look at Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The greatest of creation, the most courageous, the most brave, even braver than Amirul Mu'mineen is Rasulullah, no doubt, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. But when the Holy Prophet was entering into Makkah in the year 9 AH, and he said to the Sahaba, look, when we get to Makkah, we're going to do Hajj. When they get to the outskirts, Quraysh come out. They say, no, you can't enter. The Prophet said, why? They said, because you entering in, doing Hajj and then leaving, it looks bad on us. You're an enemy of us. We're polytheists, you're monotheists. What's going to happen? The respect that we have is going to be finished. People are going to say, Muhammad came in, did Hajj and left and you couldn't do anything? So no, we can't allow you to come in. What did the Prophet say to them? Okay, if you're not going to allow me to enter, then let's enter a peace treaty. Let's do a sulha. Let's do a treaty of peace. Is anybody going to say the Prophet was not courageous for signing a peace treaty? No. But this also answers the question, which is the topic of today's lecture. Did Imam al-Hasan give bay'ah to Muawiyah? No. Why? Because he signed a peace treaty with him. Did the Prophet give bay'ah to Quraysh? No. He signed a peace treaty with him. So why is it that when the grandfather signs a treaty, it's a treaty, but when the grandson signs a treaty, it's bay'ah? Why being disingenuous here? If the Prophet can do bay'ah with mushrikeen, and Imam al-Hasan can also do bay'ah with mushrikeen and kafireen and enemies of the religion of Islam. The Prophet signed a treaty with Quraysh with some stipulations. I ask you again, bay'ah, how is it done? Bay'ah is what? The oath of allegiance. Do you know what that means? That means that you are swearing an oath that you will accept and believe in this person. There's no such thing as conditions when it comes to a bay'ah, right? It's unconditional. Imam Hassan signed a treaty with conditions, 5 conditions. So it can't be a bay'ah then, can it? Because if it was a bay'ah, Imam al-Hassan would have said, here's my bay'ah. But Imam Hassan signed an agreement. So Rasulullah also had conditions. One of the conditions was, if anybody of the Muslims leaves Islam and comes to Makkah to join you, you don't have to return him back to us, give him safety. But if any one of your kuffar leave Makkah and come to Medina, we'll return him back to you. You know, people like to say that our Prophet was a warlord and that he spread Islam by the sword. No, no, no. Sahaba spread Islam by the sword. My Nabi spread Islam through his rahmah. Imagine you're signing a treaty with Quraysh who are kuffar and mushrikeen, and one of the conditions is if one of us leaves Islam and comes to Makkah to join you polytheists, keep him. You know, they say that if you leave Islam, automatically kill that person. If that was the case, and it was that black and white, why would the Prophet say this in the condition? That apostates that leave Islam, give them security, give them panah, allow them to live in Makkah. But if one of yours comes to us, we'll return him back to you. It doesn't sound like a warlord to me. It doesn't sound like somebody thirsty for blood. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa signed a peace treaty with the Quraysh. Imam al-Hassan signed a peace treaty with Muawiyah. But look at the clever tactic of Imam al-Hassan. He could have fought Muawiyah, he could have killed him. Then what would have happened? Muawiyah is a martyr. Yeah, he's a shaheed. He died for the cause of Islam. Qatib-e-Wahi, Mama of the Muslims, this, that. They would have done a huge song and dance for Muhammad. They probably would have built a huge shrine over his grave, even given him the title of Sayyid al-Shuhada, maybe, you never know. But look at Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. Instead of killing him, Imam Hassan says, I'm going to sign an agreement with him, and I'm going to stipulate 5 conditions. Watch how he breaks all 5 of these conditions and nullifies the peace treaty. What was the first condition? You do not kill the Shias of my father. Second condition, you do not change the sunnah of my grandfather. Third condition, you give the blood money back. To who? To those killed in Jamal and Siffin. Number 4, you free the prisoners you took in Siffin. And number 5, you have no right to elect anybody after you. If you are to die, the leadership comes to me, Al-Hassan. If I am to die, it goes to my brother Al-Hussain. These were the 5 conditions. Muawiyah broke all 5. So even if this was a bay'ah, it's not legally binding, is it? Because Muawiyah didn't abide by the conditions either. He broke every single one. How? What was the first condition? Stop killing the Shias of my father. Did Muawiyah stop that? No. He single-handedly, individually targeted Shias of Ali ibn Abi Talib and killed them in the worst way possible. Dug mass graves and buried them alive. Burned people alive just for saying that they believe in the wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Hujr ibn Adi, one of the companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Inshallah, we get to go to Sham to do ziyarah. If you haven't been, there's a grave there. Some people say his body was dug out of his grave, Allahu alim. But Hujr ibn Adi, a companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, was arrested by Muawiyah. Him, a few of his friends and his son, Hujr's son. They killed all the companions first. Only Hujr and his son is left. The soldiers of Muawiyah said to him, denounce Imam Ali, curse Imam Ali, and you can leave. Hujr says, no, never will I curse the commander of the faithful. He said, okay, fine, we're going to kill you then. Hujr says, okay, go ahead. See, the lovers of Ali ibn Abi Talib, we wait for death. We welcome death. We're not scared of death. Why? This world is temporary. One day we're going to die. Nobody can live forever. Die in the cause of Allah to become a shaheed, the greatest of honors. You see, on the day of judgment, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in heaven, and you're going to see the shuhada that died as shaheed in this world, certain people are going to see the shuhada and become jealous of them. Because of the maqam and the rutbah that a shaheed has. The Quran says, do not think of those who have died in the way of Allah as dead. But ahya'un min indallah, they are alive with their Lord. وَلَا تَشْعُرُونَ, you don't perceive it. So shahada for Hujr ibn Adi was a blessing, an honor. So they said to Hujr, before we kill you, do you have any final requests? He says, yes. What is that? He said, kill my son first, then kill me. He said, Hujr, are you feeling okay? Usually, a father would say what? Kill me first, so that I don't see my son die. Or, release my son and kill me. Oh, Hujr, you're saying, kill my son in front of my eyes and then kill me? Why? He says, because I am firm on the path of the wilayah of my commander. There's nothing that you can say that's going to make me leave Ali ibn Abi Talib, ever. But my son is young. He's still learning. If he sees his father being beheaded, he might become so emotional that if you were to offer him money or to bribe him to leave Ali ibn Abi Talib, he might leave. And I, Hujr, cannot accept my son leaving the path of the wilayah. I would rather see him die in front of my eyes on the haqq of Aliun Waliullah, and then I will die for it. So did Muawiyah abide by the first tribulation? No, he broke it. He killed many companions. Jushayd al-Hijri as well, another companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, killed by Muawiyah. So he broke the first stipulation. Second stipulation, do not change the sunnah of my grandfather. When is Jummah, if I was to ask you? Friday, right? Did you know Muawiyah led Jummah on a Wednesday? When we talk about changing the sunnah of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, that Friday prayer is called Friday prayer. Yet on his way to Siffin, Tariq Tabari narrates that Muawiyah did what? And Ansab al-Ashraf by Baladuri. These two books state that he led Jum'ah on a Wednesday. So did he abide by the second stipulation? Don't change the sunnah? No. He broke the second stipulation. Third, give the blood money to those that were killed unjustly in Jamal and Siffin. He didn't do that either. Fourth, release the captives from Siffin. He didn't do that either. 5, you're not allowed to elect anybody. What did he do? In his lifetime, he made people give bay'ah to Yazid alayhi la'na. Because he knew, if I die, the throne is going where? To Al-Hasan. Once he dies, it's going where? To Al-Hussain. And we don't know how long Hussein's going to live. And Hussein's got children as well. Hussein's got brothers as well. Other children of Imam Ali. When is Khilafah going to remain or come back to Bani Umayyah? They were very tribalistic. So in his lifetime, he guaranteed the seat and the position for Yazid whilst he's still alive, so that he knows that when I die, my son is automatically going to sit on the throne. And what happened? Bani Umayyah ruled for thousands and thousands of months after Muawiyah. You have Marwan, you have his son, all the way down to Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. All of these were Bani Umayyah, ruled for over 1,000 months. So he broke the final stipulation, which was what? Because you cannot elect anybody. You know, a funny thing that people say, Aisha is al-Mu'mineen. Muawiyah is Khal al-Mu'mineen. Yet these two went to war against Amir al-Mu'mineen. And all three of them are going to be sitting in Jannah together. I would love to see that meeting. Sorry about Jamal, everything okay? My bad, Siffin was a mistake. But we're all good. You see, Aisha, where's she buried? If I was to ask you today, where's she buried? You don't know, do you? You know why? Mama, uncle, killed the mother of the believers. Muawiyah killed Aisha. When I upload this lecture, I will put all the references in the video and in the description. For those watching, go read it. Muawiyah knew that Aisha wants Khilafah to come back into her tribe of Abu Bakr, and the tribe that he was from. We're Bani Umayyah. There's Bani Hashim, and then there were other tribes as well. Banu Taim or Naim was the tribe of Abu Bakr. So Muawiyah thought, if I die, Aisha could be a problem for Yazid. Aisha could maybe object to Yazid. She won't let Hassan take it, no problem. But she may not let my son take it. So do you know how Aisha died? She's not buried in Jannatul Baqi. The Prophet had 11 wives in total. 9 of them are in Baqi. Khadijatul Kubra al-Ma'sumin is in Makkah. Where's Aisha? Somewhere in Sham. Do you know how she died? Muawiyah invited Aisha to his house for a meal. Aisha leaves with a convoy, arrives at the house of Muawiyah. On the dining table, Muawiyah puts a chair, but before he places the chair down, he digs a hole, a pit into the ground, fills it with swords and spears, and then covers it with a cloth and some sticks, and then places a chair on top. When Aisha enters into the house to eat, Bismillah, al-Mu'mineen, how about sit. Tariq Tabari narrates that as soon as Aisha sat, the chair collapsed on itself, she fell down, he filled it with cement. Buried her alive. Ahlul Sunnah come forward and say anybody that disrespects any wife of the Prophet is a lanti, is a kafir, is this, is that. Hold him accountable. Muawiyah killed Aisha, yet Muawiyah is radiyallahu anha. Aisha is radiyallahu anha. How? When the killer and the killed are both, may Allah be pleased with them. Allah's not going to be pleased with neither of them. However, he broke all the conditions. Now let's talk about the treaty. Number one, yes, there are traditions within our Shia sources, such as Al-Kafi, for example, by Shaykh Al-Kulayni that mentioned Imam Al-Hasan and Hussain went to Sham. Imam Hassan stood up, gave the bay'ah, ordered Imam Hussain to do the same. There are several ways that we analyze hadith in Shia corpus. You see, Ahlul Sunnah believe that there are certain books that are deemed 100% authentic, right? Which means that you can't doubt anything in these books. For example, the Sahihain, the two Sahihs. What? Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. There's nothing in these two books that are deemed weak at all. Nothing in there that is fabricated. Everything is authentic. Now that's their understanding of hadith science and ilm al-daraya. But then they think we have the same concept. But no, we don't. The only sahih book in Islam is the Quran, that's it. After that, every single book, whether it be Nahj al-Balagha, Al-Kafi, Al-Istibsar, Tahdhib al-Ahkam, Man la yahdhiru al-Faqih, Wasail al-Shia, any of them, each hadith is judged on its own individuality. Just saying it's in Al-Kafi is not enough. So when I say to a Sunni member, oh, I've got a hadith from Bukhari, he's like, oh. Because they know, that's it. If it's in Bukhari, it's in Bukhari. We can't doubt it. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani wrote a commentary of Bukhari called Fathul Bari fi Sharh Sahih al-Bukhari. In his Muqaddamah, in the introduction, he says if any Muslim doubts one hadith from Sahih al-Bukhari, he's a kafir. That's the authenticity level that they've given Bukhari. And that same book says the Prophet was suicidal and bewitched. Didn't know he was a prophet. Tried to throw himself from the mountain, etc. Anyway, we don't have that concept. We don't have Sahih al-Kafi. So just saying it's in al-Kafi alone, that's not enough. We need to look at the hadith. And when you study in Hawza and you study the ilm al-daraya, ilm al-kalam, ilm al-hadith, they teach you that a hadith is judged on certain criteria. Number one, we look at the chain of narrators. If there's anybody in the chain from the author of the book to the person that said it that's weak, hadith is rejected. Number two, we look at the matan, the text. We compare it to the Quran. If a hadith contradicts the Quran, we reject the hadith. Number two, the matan, the text. We compare it to other hadiths that are massively transmitted. For example, if there was 50 different chains of a hadith that the Prophet said turn left, and there was one hadith where the Prophet said turn right, we reject the one that says turn right. Why? Because they are muhtabar riwayat that are massively transmitted that say one thing. These are just the surface. When you study this, it gets even deeper. In Arabic, one word can have multiple meanings. However, if you were to look at these traditions within Al-Kafi and Bihar al-Anwar, for example, number one, they have weak narrations. The chain of narrators, they are enemies of Imam Ali in the chain. Why would I take from the enemy of Imam Ali about what his son Al-Hassan did to his enemy Muawiyah? Doesn't make sense. So the fact that within these chains there are people who have open bughz against Amir al-Mu'mineen and Al-Bayt alayhim as-salam, these hadiths are rejected. Number two, the Quran says never bow to a tyrant person, never bow to him, stand up against him. Imam al-Hassan will never give bay'ah to anybody. Imam al-Hassan only gave bay'ah to two people, his father, his grandfather, that's it. No one else. So these hadiths, number one, they're weak. The ulama have rejected them. Imam al-Hassan did not give the oath of allegiance or the bay'ah to Muawiyah, but he signed a peace treaty with Muawiyah. Just as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi signed a peace treaty with the Quraysh. Nobody says the Prophet gave bay'ah, so Imam Hassan didn't give bay'ah. Also, what did Imam Hassan give up then? It was political leadership. It wasn't legal leadership. Here's the conclusion of the lecture. Being a legal leader is something else. Being a political leader is something else. Imam al-Hassan gave up the political seat to Muawiyah, but never accepted Muawiyah as his own Khalifa, never gave him the bay'ah, and never recognized the legitimacy of Muawiyah. He just gave him the political leadership, which is fine. Amir al-Mu'mineen for 25 years watched his own leadership being politically taken by Abu Bakr, Umar and Usman for 27 years, and he remained silent. So Imam Hassan gave Muawiyah the political leadership, but remember, he gave him that under the conditions of the treaty. Muawiyah broke every single condition of the treaty. So what does that mean? That means even that political leadership that Imam al-Hassan had given him, even that's nullified. Because by breaking the stipulations of the treaty of Muawiyah, you've relinquished your right to even the political authority. So no, Imam al-Hassan did not give bay'ah to Muawiyah. The narrations are weak and rejected because they contain enemies of Ahlul Bayt. They go against the Quran, and we have mass transmitted mutawatir narrations that Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam never gave bay'ah to Muawiyah at all. So what he did was, like I said, he gave him political leadership, but he broke the stipulations. So Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam just did what his grandfather did. He emulated Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi by saying, oh grandfather, you signed a treaty with the mushrikeen, I'm signing a treaty with the kafir. Simple. Nothing else. And when Muawiyah saw that the treaty has been broken and that I have violated every single condition, he was then forced to do what? To give poison to Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. He got poison from a Christian who was a master of chemistry, and he said to him, listen, I want you to bring me a poison that's very lethal, a poison that has never been used before. The guy says, don't worry, leave it with me. A few days later, he comes to Sham. He gives Muawiyah the container that had the poison in it that he gave to the wife of Imam al-Hasan Ju'da, who then poisoned Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. When Muawiyah held the poison, he opened the lid, and the physician straight away said, close the lid, close the lid. He said, why? He said, this poison is so hazardous that if it was to come in contact with your skin, it will melt the flesh. Even the fumes of the poison, if you were to inhale them, they can have a psychological effect on your mind and your body and your limbs. That's the poison that was given to Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. Imagine, it comes in contact with your skin, it burns your skin. Imam al-Hasan digested that poison into his stomach, which is why the narrations mention that Imam al-Hasan was vomiting out parts of his liver or his organs. That's how hazardous this was. But when we remember tonight, we remember Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. Imam Sajjad, where do we begin? Your trials began on the morning of the day of Ashura. You saw everybody go towards the battlefield not to return, until finally when Imam al-Hussain enters the tent for the final time to bid farewell to Imam Sajjad and give him the relics of Imamah, give him his will, give him his ring that had the seal of Imamah on it. Imam Zainul Abideen, as you know, was unconscious, so he woke up, saw his father, blood all on the beard of Abu Abdullah. He looks up and says, Father, Aina Habib? Oh Father, where is Habib? Abu Abdullah says, oh my son, Qad Qutil, he's been killed. Oh Father, where is Muslim ibn Usajah? Where is Zuhair ibn al-Kain? One by one, he's mentioning all the companions. Abu Abdullah says, oh my son, they have been killed, they have been killed. Until finally he says, Father, Aina Abul Fadl al-Abbas? Oh Father, where is my uncle Abbas? Abu Abdullah says, oh Sajjad, Abbas is gone. And then finally when he says, Aina Aliyun al-Akbar, where is my brother Aliyun al-Akbar? Abu Abdullah didn't say he's been killed. And read the Maqtal, he didn't say he's been killed. Why? Because Abu Abdullah knew losing a brother breaks your back. He just experienced losing Abbas. How does he tell Sajjad that your brother Aliyun al-Akbar is gone? So the Imam says to Sajjad, oh Sajjad, understand that the only two remaining males in this camp are me and you, that's it. Imam Zainul Abideen gets up, leaning on a stick, dragging his sword, attempting to defend his father. But he was ill, so he couldn't fight. So the Maqatil mentioned that Abu Abdullah said to Sayyida Zainab, stop him from leaving the tent, otherwise the Nasl of al-Muhammad will be severed. He needs to continue his imamah. But this was not the most difficult time for Imam Zainul Abideen. For when he was asked, Ya Sajjad, what is the most difficult time? He says, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham. He says, nothing was more difficult to me than Sham. More difficult than the day of Ashura? Yes, more difficult than the day of Ashura. Why? Because Imam Sajjad says, in Sham, I had to see my aunties and my sisters and my relatives have their outer hijab taken and paraded from city to city through Kufa and Sham. And not only that, Imam Sajjad says that when Sayyida Zainab was walking, the ladies would come and poke Sayyida Zainab with a spear in her hips. And the people would say, these are the children of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Come and avenge the dead from Badr and Uhud and Khandaq. Come and take your badla against the daughter of Ali. Imam Sajjad says, not only there, they pelted us with stones. Imam Sajjad says, not even there. He says, the worst of it was that they poured boiling water over Sayyida Zainab and over me. Imam Sajjad went through all this. Then he was imprisoned in the Zindan. Then he loses his four-year-old sister Sakina salamullahi alayha, crying in the dungeons of Sham, until they say that, do you know how Sakina died? She died from a heart attack. Sakina, when she was given the head of Abu Abdullah, she cried so much that her heart just stopped. Imagine a 4-year-old dying of a heart attack. Just seeing the state of her father's head when it was presented to her. He had to then bury his sister. Imam Sajjad says, when I buried my sister, I left the chains on her arms and the bangles and the talk and everything. All the imprisonment equipment, I left it on my sister. Why? So that on the day of judgment, when Sakina rises, the people can see this is the state that I buried my sister in. Despite all this, he then comes back to Karbala on the day of ir-Rahman, buries the heads with the bodies, and then Imam Zainul Abideen arrives back into Medina. And we say, how difficult was it for Imam Sajjad that when he arrived into Medina, the people couldn't even recognize him anymore. The people that grew up with him. What did Kufa and Sham do to Sajjad alayhi salam, that his own relatives, Bani Hashim, that when he entered Medina, he walked straight past them, they didn't even know who he was. 22, 23-year-old youth. But for them, he looked like a 50-year-old man with his back arched, using a stick to walk because he had no strength left in him to be able to walk straight. Imam Sajjad says to a companion by the name of Bishr, he says, "Oh Bishr, you're a poet. I want you to go to the grave of Rasulullah and tell everybody that we Bani Hashim have returned, and tell them what happened to my father." So Bishr says, I went to the grave of Rasulullah and I gave an alan. I said, "What? Ya Ahli Yathrib, ala maqam lakum biha qutil al-Hussain fi ardi Karbala." Oh people of Yathrib, Medina, leave your homes, for Hussain has been killed in Karbala. When this alan was done at the grave of the Prophet, Baneen comes running out of her house, holding a baby in her hand, Fadl, the son of Abu Fadl Abbas. She comes towards Bishr, she says, "Oh Bishr, I hear you have news of Hussain. Where is he?" Bishr says, "Who is this lady?" He said, "She is Baneen, the mother of Abbas." So Bishr thinks, how do I tell this lady who lost 4 boys in Karbala? So Bishr says, "A'damallahu lakil ajr ya Baneen." May Allah give you patience, O Baneen, over what? The Musabina waladik al-Ja'far. That your son Ja'far was killed, may Allah give you patience. Baneen says, "I didn't ask you about Ja'far, where is Hussain?" Then he says, "May Allah give you patience for Abdullah." She says, "I didn't ask you about Abdullah, where is Hussain?" Then when he said, "May Allah give you patience on the death of Al-Fadl al-Abbas," she lifts her hands up and puts her on her head. The baby falls down from her lap. She says, "Oh Bishr, by telling me that Abbas has been killed, you've cut my heart into pieces. But may 1,000 Abbasis be sacrificed. Tell me, where is my son Hussain?" That's all Baneen asked for, until finally Bishr says, Baneen, "A'zamallahu lakil ajr bimusabina Aba Abdullah al-Hussain." He was killed as well. She says, "How was he killed?" He said, "They severed his head from his neck, ya Baneen. The horses of Bani Umayyah trampled on the body of your son Hussain, ya Baneen." Then Baneen says, "Where is Zainab?" She says, "Zainab is in her house." Baneen comes towards the house. And the Masayib here, let me ask you one question. Baneen knows what Zainab looks like, yes? Baneen recognizes Zainab. Do you know why? Baneen raised Zainab. So that means she knows what Zainab looks like. The Maqatil mentioned that when Baneen entered the house of Zainab, she saw a woman on the prayer mat. Baneen couldn't recognize this lady. So she says, "Oh lady, where is Zainab?" The narration mentions that this lady looks up towards Baneen and says, "Oh Baneen, I am Zainab." Baneen is in complete shock. What did Kufa and Sham do to Zainab that Baneen couldn't recognize her? She says, "Anti Zainab al-Hashimiyya? Are you Zainab from the clan of Hashim?" Sayyidah Zainab said, "La, ana Zainab al-Masbiyya." I am Zainab, the one who was taken captive. Don't call me Zainab al-Hashimiyya anymore. I am Zainab, the one who was taken captive. She says, "Zainab, was Abbas loyal? I heard Hussein's head was cut. Where was Abbas? Did he not do anything? Did he not protect him?" Says Baneen, "Don't say anything about Abu Fadl Abbas. His right hand was cut. His left hand was cut. There was an arrow in his eye. 300 arrows were fired at him. Baneen, his head was split open. He fell from his horse with no hands. There was an arrow in his eye, Baneen. Abbas protected Hussain until his last breath. Nobody dared look at Hussain while Abbas was still there." So Baneen would go to Jannatul Baqi. She would make 4 graves in the sand of Jannatul Baqi to represent her 4 sons. Then she would make 1 grave to represent Hussain, and she would sit there all day in the sun, and she would cry out loud, and she would say, "La tadu anni waiki Baneen. Do not call me Baneen anymore." Why? Because Baneen means the mother of sons. She says, "I have lost my sons in Karbala. Don't call me Baneen." And she says, "Oh Abbas, oh my son Abbas, I hear that when a man falls from the horse, how does he protect that fall? He uses his hands to protect his face. Abbas, I hear that you had no hands and there was an arrow in your eye, oh my son Abbas. When you fell from the horse, where did you land, O Abbas? What happened to that arrow in your eye, O Abbas?" Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. La'natullahi ala al-qawm al-zalimin. Wa saya'lamu alladhina zalamu ayyu munqalibin yanqalibun. Ya Hussain.
जख्मी जख्मी मेरा मौला, दिल है जिसका पारा पारा, ताजिया ने खदाया